Good evening and welcome to Gunner Shot. Today we're going to talk of something very interesting, nailing Pakistan's lies. And to talk about all this, I have a varied panel and someone who who've been in the thick of things during Op Sindoor one way or the other. As you see, I have with me Mr. Michael Rubin. He's joining us all the way, or Professor Michael Rubin, who's joining us all the way from USA, and he's been pretty vocal about Op Sindoor and the way Pakistan has gone about lying on almost everything. Then I have Mr. Chaitanya Prasad, who's a renowned strategic communicator. Then, of course, General Gautam Murthy and General Atta Hasnain, with whom you need no introduction at all. And later, we'll have Mr. Jiten Jain, who's a cybersecurity expert, also join us. Why have we chosen this? We are not going to talk of operations, we are not going to talk of anything, but we're going to talk of something very fundamental to all Indians. All Indians. That's the thing which I'm going to talk of today. Why? Ever since Op Sindoor has started, Pakistan has been spreading lies and lies about Indians. It's not only Op Sindoor. They've gone into TikTok, they've gone into all kinds of social media, and they've been backed completely by China. And TikTok is something which is completely dark to all of us who are in India. And this feedback I got on one of my shows, which I did on Gunner Shot, that look, sir, Pakistan is spreading absolutely dark lies about India and Indians in TikTok, which is quite well known, or rather well subscribed to in USA. So I said, okay, how do we do something about this? What are the kind of lies which are there, which are coming about there? India is the aggressor in South Asia. India has lost this war to Pakistan. How can India be a reliable next global power and things like that? Then personal, why Indians don't shower? Why India is such a dirty and unsafe country? Hindus are weak and uncivilized. Hindus are dirty, and things like that. I mean, they're pretty wild. And India needs India. I'm not talking of the army, the navy, and the air force. India as a whole and Indians as a whole, and in friends of India and India's strategic partners as a whole need to understand what it is. We need to nail Pakistan's lies on this. And it is this I request all of you to just put up whatever you have in your mind as to how do we go about this with certain examples and leads. And then we'll see how to take it up with the relevant authorities, because this has to be done on a global scale. With this, we'll start the ball rolling. And I'd request General Gautam Murthy, sir, to say your views, put across your views on this. And then we'll have Professor Michael Rubin, followed by Mr. Chaitanya Prasad, and then General Gautam Murthy. And if before that General Mr. Jiten Jain comes, he will have his say. General Gautam Murthy, sir, all yours.
Good evening and good morning to Professor Michael Rubin, all the way from Washington, D.C. Good evening, good morning to your viewers. This, as you've rightly brought out, this Casa and Gunner Shots webinar has to hit where it matters. Why did we call it Nailing Pakistan Lies? The state-controlled media in Pakistan has emphasized Pakistan's resilience and claimed Indian actions violated international norms. They attempt to portray India as the aggressor to sway global public opinion, though I don't know whether they've got much success. And Pakistan has showed no evidence or anything to put forth their claims. The presentations, as we saw on YouTube and elsewhere, were not too good, and their ministers, armed forces personnel were trolled for poor presentations and weak communication skills. In fact, we've all seen on Sky News, Yalda Hakim put down the Pakistan minister when he admitted that they are the fountainhead of terrorism. The other thing that really came about was Pakistan didn't engage any civilian official as a part of the briefing. Here we had a synergized briefing, the armed forces and with the MEA. PIB was putting out notes, but Pakistan media and influencers, they just maintained a close watch on Indian newspapers and influencers of Indian origin and quoted them as per the convenience. They utilize misreporting and fabricating reporting by a few Indian houses to debunk the claims and establish them as peddlers of fake narrative. Now, India is a free democracy. Everybody knows that. Anyone with a mic and a camera can speak their mind, and there's no doubt, some of the media channels were irresponsible by the reporting. But Pakistan has utilized this and highlighted it. And right now, what is happening is people in Pakistan are slowly exposing their lies. Let us see what are the claims that Pakistan made and what actually is the reality. They made several claims regarding the situation in Jammu and Kashmir, allegations of human rights violations, aggressive military actions by India. But on ground reports and independent investigations contradicted these claims. And there is a complex reality which is shaped by cross-border terrorism and local insurgency. General Atta Hasnain is the best to he's understood this so well and has written so eloquently and spoken so eloquently about it. Pakistan circulated a so-called dossier primarily via social media and messaging apps, accusing India of staging a false flag operation in Pahalgam and labeling India's response as unprovoked aggression. I mean, this narrative deliberately ignores the well-documented role of Pakistan-based terror groups in the attack and is obviously aimed at deflecting the blame and garnering international sympathy. Now we know how many books have we all read about how Pakistan has encouraged and armed terrorist groups. Hillary Clinton famously said, "You can't, keep rattlesnakes in your backyard and hope they don't bite you." So Pakistan has been putting forth a dossier which claims to paint India as the aggressor, despite clear evidence and claims of responsibility by the resistant front, which we all know is a Lashkar-e-Toiba proxy for the Pelgam attack. I think Professor Michael Rubin will throw more light on it. Then they claim that India was conducting indiscriminate military operations when Op Sindoor was launched. Now, we all know they were targeted operations with focus on minimizing civilian casualties and collateral damage. Despite overwhelming evidence, Pakistan continues to deny their involvement in sponsoring terrorism. But we have seen Pakistani generals attending the funerals of the terrorists after they were killed by this strike. And Pakistan has also said that you've killed a number of women and children. The question I would like to ask, what were women and children doing in the mosque at dead of night when even during the daytime they're not permitted to enter? They say human rights violations are rampant. Now, there have been demolition of illegal properties of overground workers in the valley. Now, that was highlighted and tom-tommed. But actually, efforts are made to safeguard the rights and well-being of civilians with humanitarian aid provided to the affected areas. And one thing that Pakistan is completely blacked out is the whole union territory of J&K observed a lockdown protest against the killing of innocents. Whole of J&K stood as one and said that this is deplorable, reprehensible, disgusting, and we have nothing to do with it, and we support the Indian government. Now, after the commencement of Op Sindhu, the government of Pakistan shared a video in which they claimed of bringing down two Rafale jets. Now, this claim was found to be false as the video was found to be that of a video game. Besides, I have been reading international media and reports, not from Indians, but from other commentators who said that India has used Banshee Jet 80 plus decoy drones that mimic the radar profile of fighters like Su-30, MiG-29 Rafales. Now, these drones carried electronic packages that accurately pinpointed Pakistan AD positions, and therefore the IAF could engage them with pinpoint accuracy. Now, they claim that they destroyed India's Adhampur airbase, and Pakistan media and social media spread false propaganda about destruction of military bases in Gujarat, Uri, Nagrota, Rajouri, and even claims that airfields in Akhnur and Bhatinda were destroyed. To incite panic within India, they circulated rumors about explosions at Jaipur and Srinagar airports, as well as the destruction of railway and electricity infrastructure. None of this has occurred. All these claims are proven false. And besides, Prime Minister made a very emphatic statement by visiting Adampur Air Base and rebutted Pakistan's claim in its entirety. Now, after the ceasefire was announced, they said, no, 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 India was forced to come and for the ceasefire. We had not asked for it, but India needed. The DG, their DGISPR said they did attack civilian areas in Amritsar and accused India of false flag yet again. Pakistan's official channels, including the military spokesperson, claimed that India had fired missiles on Amritsar, including on the Golden Temple, and tried to blame Pakistan for these attacks. Now, this is such a ridiculous claim that I don't know who will ever believe this preposterous and outrageous claim. They're trying desperately to mislead both the Indian public and the international community. Next day, they themselves accepted that they attacked Amritsar. Similarly, false reports included allegations that India attacked the Nankana Sahib Gurudwara in Pakistan, which was also debunked by Indian authorities. Again, their famous claim is India targeted our civilian areas, there are no terror camps, but we know better. Now, India's response on the ground was characterized by its commitment to restoring peace and security while addressing the root causes of insurgency. The Indian Armed Forces adopted a multifaceted approach, which we all saw, combining military action with community engagement and development initiatives. We have seen how we have sent delegations abroad. All Indians have stood on as one. All opposition parties have included their members in the delegations that have gone abroad to counter Pakistan's false narrative. Now, let me tell you something about Pakistan's losses. Now, there are a number of reports coming up, but one I would go by quite surely is what has been verified by Colonel Vinayak Bhatt, who is a veteran of the military intelligence and he's an astute interpreter of satellite imagery. He tweets at Raj47. He has over 19,500 followers on Twitter and is seen as an authority on interpretation of satellites. Now, according to him, and I'm going by what he says, what was Pakistan's destruction in the air? Four Chinese fighters, one high altitude, very high value asset, probably a drone, I don't know what it is. Two surface to surface missiles were intercepted. Two hypersonic cruise missiles were intercepted mid flight. And any number of UAVs and loitering munitions that I referred to in the beginning, how we picked up their UAVs and through the UAVs, their radars. On ground, what did Pakistan lose on the night of 9th May? One airborne early warning and control system aircraft was bombed. Radars at Mangla, Chor, and Karachi. Four F-16s on the tarmac in Jacobabad. There's been significant damage to the airfields. The proof is there out in the open for everyone to see. And as per the reports, about 35 to 40 Pakistani soldiers were killed along the line of control. Now, this is what has been completely hidden from the Pakistani public. But for how long can they keep denying this as evidence is tumbling out? And let us see for how long can Pakistan's latest self-appointed field marshal continue to fool his people and the international community. I finished, General Shankar. Back to you.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks for your views. I request Professor Rubin your views in this entire issue, sir, and how to nail Pakistan's lies.
Thank you so much, General Shankar. And also, I want to thank you and Gunnar Shot for actually the way you framed this, because it's a really, really interesting question. At least in Washington, in the United States, we too often don't look at the informational aspect of warfare. And of course, in our strategy academies, they teach the so-called DIME model, where every strategy should have a diplomatic and informational, military, and an economic component. In order, and the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts, but the United States has traditionally been negligent of this, and kudos to you to ensure that we, because you have an international audience, actually pay attention to this aspect as we analyze what went on. First of all, when it comes to just the blatancy of Pakistan's lies, there's nothing new here. There has not been a single war between India and Pakistan that Pakistan hasn't tried to convince itself that India started, even though Pakistan in reality started all of them, and then hasn't tried to sidestep accountability for their disastrous decisions by claiming somehow that there was a victory, when clearly, from a Pakistani standpoint, any objective measure, what happened to Pakistan in each war was not a victory. Now, as I move forward, what I'm worried about is why Field Marshal Asim Munir is so insistent on these lies. As you know, I'm a comparativist. And last summer, I spent a good deal of time in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, embedded with the M23 insurgent group. Now, of course, when we look at what happened with the insurgency in the Democratic Republic of Congo, we had a lifting about 5 years ago in the United Nations Security Council on reporting requirements for the Democratic Republic of Congo and their military purchasing. The UN Security Council had imposed these reporting requirements after 2 wars over the last 25 years, which killed millions of people in Central Africa. And Felix Tshisekedi, the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, proceeded to go on a shopping spree, especially with Chinese drones, Chinese weaponry. And like many dictators, if I may, he conflated and confused what a well-trained, capable military was. A well-trained, capable military is just that. It's well-trained. But too often, dictators and those coming from corrupt countries think that if they purchase top-shelf military equipment, in Pakistan's case, for example, Turkish drones or Chinese jet fighters, that makes up for a fundamental lack of training. And it also covers up for corruption, which erodes the military. Russia has had the same trouble with not accounting for corruption in its military, which is why perhaps Vladimir Putin misjudged the ease with which he would be able to go through Ukraine. What was being reported to him about the Russian military was different than the reality. Now, the point of this is, in Congo, they tried to provoke a conflict in order to distract the Congolese people from their own internal failings. They tried to provoke a conflict with Rwanda. Say what you will about Rwanda, its military is incredibly well trained. And the Rwandan army and M23, this insurgent group, were able to push back the Congolese military with billions of dollars of equipment, simply because the Congolese military wasn't well trained and the Congolese were lying about its capabilities, to the point that today there's a real possibility that the rebels could take over Kinshasa more than 1,500 kilometers away and overthrow the Felix Tshisekedi regime. Now, I bring that up as one example. There's another example from the year 2020, which is when Azerbaijan invaded Nagorno-Karabakh, the Armenian populated enclave. And within the space, the Armenians had held Nagorno-Karabakh for about a quarter century, since they had held Nagorno-Karabakh, and they had grown complacent. Perhaps there had been some corruption in the Armenian military in procurement. So after the Azerbaijani army ran roughshod over Nagorno-Karabakh, the Armenians actually looked at where they had failed. They acknowledged their failure. Their defense minister in prison, where he remains today, for negligence and for corruption. The Pakistanis have 2 choices. They have a choice, I should say. They can either go the Congolese route and cover up the corruption with big lies, or they can go the Armenian route and have accountability. It's clear to me today that Asim Munir and Pakistan is much more like the Democratic Republic of Congo than it is like Armenia. The lie is meant to cover up accountability. Lies help Pakistan evade the big questions. The lies also show the Pakistani leadership. They show the fear the Pakistani leadership have of their own people. When we actually look at what the Pakistanis are saying about taking out this Indian airfield or successful strikes elsewhere, what they are showing is what the Pakistani people would demand from their military, what the military goals are of Pakistan. Now, they might be complete falsehoods, but we should recognize how far this corruption and this incitement has penetrated Pakistani society, that the fact of the matter is that the top leaders of Pakistan feel that the only thing that could assuage the Pakistani populace, the bloodlust that the Pakistanis have been trained to engage in, is the destruction of the Golden Temple. When you see in Amritsar, for example, when you see this sort of conspiracy theory as well, oftentimes we also have to recognize the projection that those lies show. When Pakistan is coming up with the wildest lies, the wildest conspiracy theories, that's an indication of the Pakistani mind, at least at official levels. And that itself, I mean, from an Indian point, we can standpoint, we can laugh at it, we can look at how ridiculous it is. But we also need to worry about it because it shows how unhinged and how detached from reality the circle around perhaps Asim Munir are. I'll go further, however, and I'll be writing on this in the next week. One of the biggest lies, and I do think it needs to be acknowledged, isn't simply about how the Pakistanis performed in this military engagement. One of the biggest lies in which Pakistan engages today is about the authenticity of Pakistani nationalism. The fact of the matter is Pakistan has turned towards promoting the Islamist extremism to be a glue, to hold the disparate Pakistani communities and cultures together, the Punjabis, the Sindhis, the Pashtun, and so forth. This has been their strategy ever since 1971 when they lost Bangladesh. But increasingly, there is no hiding the fact that the Pakistanis are engaging in this aggression and they're engaging in these lies because they have absolutely no self-confidence in the legitimacy, not of their government, but of their entire country. And this is, I mean, what we're basically seeing is a growing desperation within Pakistan, which is only going to grow worse as they realize that their country is on the verge, perhaps, of falling apart. When we see the Pakistanis talking about, quote unquote, freeing Kashmir, or the Khalistan movement and separatism in Punjab, again, just like their lies, this sort of strategy is a reflection of the Pakistani mind, its projection of Pakistan's own lack of self-confidence and their own realization of the vulnerability of their own country. Now, just in conclusion, I want to turn to another aspect of this, and that's China. What I would argue as an analyst, India needs to realize, when we look at Pakistan, the aggression that Pakistan engaged in, starting with its terrorist proxies and continuing on to the escalation, because India had provided off-ramps for Pakistan to save face at every step of the way. Initially, it didn't go after, for example, Pakistani military bases, even though Pakistani uniformed military officers were attending terrorist funerals. The fact of the matter is, however, China is in an undeclared war with India. China has provided Pakistan with military equipment. That's part one. China has provided Pakistan with an economic bailout to allow it to engage in this military aggression. That's part two. And when we look at TikTok and the various TikTok algorithms, which the Chinese intelligence service is able to manipulate, that's part of the informational warfare in which Pakistan is engaging. We can say it's gray zone warfare, but the fact of the matter is, while the West, especially where I sit in Washington, D.C., is obsessed with what China might do with regard to Taiwan. China is being as aggressive, if not more, in its aggression towards India right now, even if it wants the plausible deniability of working through Pakistan. The last point I'll make, and this is just an analytical question towards the future. Without doubt, Pakistan is lying. We know Pakistan is lying. What the statements they're making are so ridiculous, and they're so demonstrably false. I'm reminded historically of, again, what the Russians have gone through, both in Afghanistan and in Chechnya, where the Russians were arguing that they were being very, very successful, that there was no military difficulty. And yet, if you went to the Special Forces graveyard in Pskov in Russia, as some people did and got arrested for doing it, and cataloged the number of new graves that were being dug, it was clear that the Russian military back in the 1980s wasn't as successful in Afghanistan, or in the early 1990s wasn't as successful in Chechnya. But what ultimately made the difference and forced the Russians to confront reality was the mothers of the soldiers who were coming back in body bags in both Afghanistan and in Chechnya. And my question is, as Pakistan continues to lie about the damage which was done to its military facilities, at what point, and I don't have an answer to this, are the Pakistani mothers going to become a social media force of their own in demanding accountability and saying enough is enough from people like Asim Munir, who may want to parade and declare themselves field marshal, but are in reality personally responsible for the tragedy which has now befallen Pakistan. It's a tragedy of Pakistan's own making. But with that, let me turn the floor back over.
Thanks a lot, Professor Rubin. You made a lot of points, but I'll get to the points later. I have one follow-up question. How much do you think the Pakistani operations and Chinese info war has had an effect on the American psyche at this point of time, or during this course of this time? Is the signals
I don't think
we
it
get
has. Go ahead, General Schenker.
Yeah, the signals we get are mixed. That's why I'm asking you, if you have some idea as to what the establishment feels, what society feels, or various people in USA feel.
I'd say, frankly, the problem in the United States isn't this misinformation. At a government level, the problem is moral equivalency, period. I mean, perhaps some people around Donald Trump are still just operating off the cuff, and Donald Trump himself has been prone to this. Among Americans generally, first of all, Americans tend to be sympathetic towards India. But in reality, let me be blunt, Americans don't care. It's not on their radar screen. It's already faded from the news. So it's not the Americans which people need to worry about. I would worry about, let me say, especially sitting in Washington, and as polarized and polemical as Washington can be right now. Everything is political in Washington right now. And it's created a very unfortunate atmosphere in Washington. When I look at the reaction, which I saw in New Delhi in the aftermath of the terrorist attack in Kashmir, and then in the national unity exhibited around Operation Sindoor, I have nothing but admiration. What I believe the purpose of the TikTok and the propaganda warfare is, especially in Beijing, but to some extent in Pakistan and certainly in Turkey as well, is to start to erode the loyalty and the support of India's Muslim community, to try to make inroads there. That whether they are successful or not, whether they will be successful or not, I don't know. But I suspect that that is the goal of this misinformation, to try to create a Trojan horse inside India. And this is something which Indian strategists are going to need to be very careful about in their effort to neutralize this before it can sink roots into a more ignorant class of the population.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your views. I think they were very important. You spoke of, Pakistan behaving like the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Pak army fears their own people. The government also fears their own people. A very important point is you spoke of the bloodlust in the Pakistan society. I think that's something which we have not factored in our way of thinking. We need to, and China in an undeclared war on India. I think the realization is there today with everyone. At this stage, I'd like to welcome Jiten Jain. Welcome to this panel, Mr. Jain.
Thank you, sir.
We'll get to you. Get absorb the whole story, and then we'll move ahead. And of course, we have to play this gray zone with Pakistan and China, and we have to now step out of our own bubble of responding to our operational situation and now getting into the gray zone, because I think from here on the gray zone will dominate. With this as a wrap up, I'd like to thank Professor Michael Rubin for his views because he has to leave. So you could leave whenever you want, Professor Rubin. Thanks a lot once again. We look forward to your views later someday. And I
Thank
now
you.
request, Mr. Chaitanya Prasad, sir. You heard what has happened. What General Murthy has spoken, what Michael Rubin has spoken. Your views, please.
Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for inviting me to this power-packed webinar. I have been listening very carefully as to the kind of information and the analysis that has gone in. My perspective, sir, would be essentially focusing on the kind of the communication outburst that has unfortunately happened in this crisis. As we begin, I would say that we are currently witnessing a kind of a communication tussle, if I would be able to call it, between stakeholders and constituencies globally, especially in the geopolitical and the geostrategic space. The communication tussle, as I would say, is not about a battle of messaging and dissemination. It is, yes, one part of the story. It is purely a pitched battle to position and influence the control of the narrative landscape. That is what Professor Rubin said. That is what Lieutenant General Murthy mentioned. The kind of examples that way. It is a kind of a perception battle that comes into play. And I would say, sir, perception in the current geopolitical space has become a driving force, dominating ideas, content, strategy, and delivery tools. And this is happening globally. Why is it happening? Because we are currently existing, we are enslaved to 24/7 instant communication formats. The dominance with the presence of new formats, new channels of information, the narrative that comes in. So the perception ecosystem is very complex, it is confused, but nonetheless, taking a cue of what unfortunately happened in the last 1 month, I must come and say, sir, that in the communication strategy or in the communication space that we are confronted with, it is, all of you have been serving generals in the past. It is not a battlefield of weaponry, sir, but it is more of a battlefield of ideas, contrasting perception, diverse strategies, and complex narratives. That has come out very wholeheartedly, unfortunately, in this whole process. Misinformation, fakery, fake news has thrived. It is something which has been very dominant, and unfortunately, as a communication person, one has watched how the neighbor has indulged in this kind of, I would say, unethical, unwholesome kind of approach. Now, we are, as I said, so currently in a phase of communication pull and pressures, there is always a slanging match. My word to your word, my truth to your untruth, vice versa. And that's what I call, sir, a communication disorder or a communication stress. Coming down to specifics, sir, As far as India is concerned, I would say before I was preparing, I just thought of putting some points of view across. What we've done very effectively as the government did so was reconfiguring the communication approach or the communication strategy. The government has very effectively reconfigured, and Sir was mentioning about the kind of briefings that were held by both civilians, by the foreign secretary, those two wonderful lady officers, as well as the commanders who gave us authentic, absolutely focused information. The dissemination was pinpointed, was extremely professional. And what happened was, in this reconfiguration battle that we had indulged in, I would say that we had put systems in place. And I'll just elaborate on the system later on. There was a re-evaluation, there was a rethink, sir, I personally feel, within the government as to how are we going to take the communication models across. And that is, it was not the old way by which government communicated or the strategies were put in place. It was a blend of old and new and modern. If I would, and by modern I would mean transformation through technology. This has been the biggest bane that we have faced, sir. How do we drive communication through the aid of technology, which is, I'm sorry to say, blatantly misused? And in the current battle, we have seen as to how technology aided our enemy in putting wrong information or misinformation or a kind of a infodemic across. We have redesigned our approach. I would expand on that. We have rediscovered because, sir, we focused on factual reporting. Sir was mentioning, General Murthy was mentioning, talking about some channels being very going over the top and playing out whatever they had to play for the battle of TRPs. But I must say, sir, the government consciously, through the public broadcaster, All India Radio, Doordarshan, that is where the government perception was coming out very well, through the actual factual reporting as well as through the kind of experts. There was no shouting brigade out there. There was no war of words between experts. It was definitely trying to put into place the correct perspective for the people. So what it tried to do, sir, was to play an important role to educate people as to what was the given reality. And perhaps this is something that we may have to work at, is what I would call media literacy, because our audiences generally get very swayed. Unfortunately, it was like a ding dong battle between IPL, T20, T50, or a Test match cricket. Those were the kind of formats that were being played across as far as the news dissemination point was concerned. And what the government did very effectively, sir, was this proactive approach, which I would call, they reimagined it. What was the reimagination? The reimagination was, how do you counter falsehood? It was like an eye for an eye, a bullet for a bullet. You would understand that much better, sir. How do you position the positive narratives across? How do you position the government viewpoint across? That is extremely important. And I would draw your attention to the fact check unit, which General Murthy mentioned to. So this was a unit established in 2019 by the act of government. And this unit has worked relentlessly in trying to dodge, block, to do away with the kind of fakery. And I must inform you, sir, that roughly 70 fake posts that came from the other side, where it was like a warfare. There were different tools deployed. The model that is deployed by the Information Bureau is called FACT, sir. Find, assess, create, and target. So these are the protocols that are followed. And I must say, they turned out to be real winners. Winners in the sense that people were able to, understand the kind of fake news perception that was trying to be floating across. What was important, sir, is that once a fake news protocol played out, what the channels which were running after the TRPs or the 100-meter dash to win one against the other, which was looking, and like, in fact, one of the generals, I forget, the chief of the army staff said, this is a battle, this is not a Bollywood movie. It was unfortunate that he had to make this remark. You cannot convert battles into real-time reporting to just cater to your own audiences. Now, PIP followed a different format. It was a mixture of what I said constitutes the fact. One aspect which I would like to mention over here, sir, for everyone here, is that when we talk about the lies that came into place, what was deployed by, unfortunately, across the border was misinformation as a statecraft. It has been a blatant misuse all through. Statecraft they used in misinformation to position their point of view, to give those fake images, trying to give a wrong narrative, trying to mislead, misguide. And a lot has been said by Professor Rubin. General Murthy also talked about it. And because we are in an age of technology driven communication, what I thought was there was weaponization of visual media. We have never seen this kind of images being played out. I mean, weapons are used in real war, but here was a battle being fought in the social media space. I mean, all kinds of funny things. You have talked a lot about TikToks, tweets, influencers. Anyone and everyone had become a self-proclaimed journalist. Everyone was giving a narrative of his own. If you compared the news bulletins from that side, God knows what they were trying to say, and the straight face with which it was being presented. I mean, you need to have guts if you want to lie in that way. What it proved, sir, is that there is communication beyond the battlefield. That is very, very important, sir. When you fight a war, it's the battlefield operation, ground ops. But here, this was something which was being fought in an area which had to be dealt on a totally different scale. And I think the government did very well, sir. There were standard operating procedures. When you had briefings every day at given time, there was definitely an information flow. The specifics came across very effectively. Technical details were given across, because there was a lot of fake news being thrown around. This kind of missile, this happened, these were the drones. And some of the images that came in, sir, were extremely varied. If you remember in 1981, 82, 19, the Iraq-Iran war, sorry, the Iraq-Iran war, were the first time when the CNN telecast those live visuals of the war. That was the time when the world saw what actual fighting was. But here you saw those drones coming in, and then the counter attack that was launched, and 24/7 alert in conflict zones. Yes, that is where the media played a role. That is where the government utilized the media space to make sure that everything went in order. What we have to also look at, sir, was the role of non-state actors and amplifiers. This was a gray area which the other people tried to utilize in a wrongful manner, but that was very well affected, plugged by the government's proactive stance. And what is important is the kind of seeding, the negative seeding that has gone in the Western media, as if nothing had happened. Professor Rubin talked about that it's off the center page. I mean, nobody in Washington is concerned. It is very sad. It is extremely sad. And the kind of knowledge sharing and the narrative building, even a spark is, ignited in such a way that you're not able to do things. And basically, it is a combination of propaganda ops as well as the psychological operations. This is a combination which India mastered very well. It did very well to counter the whole thing. And the first important thing that we need to understand, sir, in this whole 3-day, 4-day skirmish was information disorder. That is very, very important. How do you create a strategy by which you create a disorder, flooding of information, the flow of information where people are forced to accept, but then I would say very effectively the strategic communication protocols that were put in place by the government through various aspects, where both state actors played a very critical role, the influencers, and I must laud the experts who were able to give a very detailed analysis, and that came in very well, especially the kind of articles that were written for the media, where people got a perspective. And even today, sir, was my Lieutenant General Atta Hussain mentioned about Nirupama Rao ma'am's article. I mean, it is for someone to read and understand as to what has gone into the making of this geostrategic communication model. And the important thing is that, sir, when you deal with such a situation, I think this is a very strong lesson learned for us. Geostrategic communication has to be a part of foreign policy or public policy. You cannot treat communication as an adjunct. It cannot be the 12th man of a match where you send them during drink time or cricket timeout kind of phenomenon. It has to be an ingrained process. It has to be a process which needs to be taken forward. And communication strategies are developing because of this kind of instant 24/7 modules that operate and the kind of blitzkrieg that is taking place. We need to have a protocol always in place. There is needs to be an institutionalization, and I must say before I end, sir, that the institutionalization has been very robust. It has been deep. There have been very strong lessons learned. For a change, the foreign media that reported from Delhi, sir, did not get carried away by putting forth a wrong narrative. It's been a, a different story altogether. It has been a story of a reignited communication process, a focused, transparent, dynamic communication program that we have put forth, sir. Thank you very much for taking me on, sir.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Chaitanya Prasad. I thought you put eloquently a lot of issues which we did during the course of the operation. And you find resonance in the fact, Mr. John Doe keeps coming onto my programs and he gives a lot of important comments. I value his words. And he says PIB was on top of the disinformation, was surprised at how quickly they reacted within hours at the most. Also, the counter disinformation for JNK Twitter was good. I think we did play a very good hand at spreading our part of the story. And I take your point of view that look, countering information or countering disinformation has to be a opening batsman slot. It's not a 12th man. I will not even put it as a 12th man. In today's narrative warfare and narrative building, it is opening batsman, and he's also the last wicket to fall. Right. So you have this entire end-to-end spectrum where, irrespective of the operations which are going, your narratives have to keep going on and on and on. And no, but there is also a view. There is also a view, international view, which is coming out that look, India lost a narrative war. This is a hard reality which we have to face. We've done better than most, but I think we have a long way to go to learn. And that is something which, one of the things which we have to come out from, draw out of such discussions. And the second point is how do you counter the ongoing lies, which we'll have to look at. Right. With this as a thing, I thank you for your very good comments. I request Mr. Jiten Jain your views on this whole topic of how to nail Pakistan's lies.
Uh, Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me here. Am I clear? Because I'm just, speaking from a makeshift
No, don't
arrangement. So,
worry. You just speak a little louder. I'll be grateful.
I'm so glad that when you said that we have lost the narrative war, at least, in acceptance lies our possibility of course correction. Now, what has happened? Before I begin, I'll just tell you a small story. Uh, a dog and a lion had a huge conflict, and they had a tussle couple of times. The suddenly dog realized that he's in a new digital age, information age. So next time, dog baited lion into a conflict. When the skirmish was about to start, dog came along with a camera and a crew, and both lion and dog got into a fight. Lion thought that I'll teach dog a lesson of lifetime this time. I'll create a strategic deterrence. So he caught his collar and he gave him some good scratches. Dog also gave him some good scratches, some nice ones. And Lion realized that now I have to teach him a lesson. And he, कूदने के लिए, काटने के लिए, Lion took a step back and he wanted to finish the dog off. Then suddenly came, and that someone suddenly came and he ensured that there is a ceasefire. Now, dog immediately declared victory. Dog also showed the visuals of lion backing off. Dog also showed the visuals of lion, having scratches. And for him, he said that, look, I have survived. Lion had to go back. I am well, and I declared victory. Now, lion may think that, he's powerful and he has given him a lesson. The reality is dog has survived. He has given some bruises to the lion. And dog also videographed everything, and dog has presented visual evidence, and he was the first one to claim victory. And he realized that media lives in a 24-hour age. They can't, accept a vacuum. They need information, be it from a right person or wrong person. And whoever speaks first, whoever speaks louder, is treated as a person who's giving the rightful information. Now we can debate that who has won the war, whether the lion has won the war or the dog has won the war. This is what has happened to us. In Balakot, It took us 6 hours to call the first press conference to even say that we had done something. It took 35 minutes to ISPR to go on Twitter and say that some Indian planes came in and they had missed their targets and 5 crores have died. And they were able to live the story and build that narrative. They removed all the dead bodies. They said there is no evidence. And 90% of the people in this country, and I can assure that many of us in this very discussion would in the closed room would have definitely asked someone, "Sach mein Balakot mein kuch hua tha kya? Did we actually miss our targets?" Our leader of opposition was not willing to believe that we have actually done something. So this is the power of disinformation they brought to the Indian polity, Indian public, that our majority of MPs are opposition with 50 years of governance experience. Our strategy experts fell for the disinformation. Now, what did that do? A, we lost the narrative war. Two, in this time, we were forced to select weapons which could create a visual display. There was no need to have this, missiles creating this big fire visuals. It was done because so that you have an imagery to prove to your own people. So it does have an effect, whether we believe it or not, in our strategic choices, in our choice of weapons, and our choice of targets. Now, this time we realize that we will not give them a chance to dominate the information space. And within the, I think, 5 minutes of the action being completed, we issued a press release. Now, adversary in ISPR was also ready. He knew that you will course correct. But he also knew that in our country where MOT is operating in a different space altogether, our defense forces are operating in a different space, our bureaucracy is on different cloud nine. There is no coordinated effort to fight misinformation. There is no agency with a dedicated responsibility. He said, "Aap press release nikalo, I will go live on TV." So this time, if you see, the moment you had issued a press release, I'm sure if you had noticed, DG ISPR and their information minister were sitting live on BBC and Sky News. It is not coincidence. It is not that they had a pre-scheduled interview. The moment you announced, they went live. They had foreseen that something will come, and we had to dominate the information space. And they started giving stuff like Indians have come, and we are defending the airspace. We have taken down 2 aircrafts, and suddenly he announced after half an hour that I have a message. One more we have shot down. See, it was to dominate the international space about what was happening, and people for the first 2, 3, 4 hours, global media across the world ran the narratives of ISPR because in our side nobody spoke. All you had is a press release. Now, see, if you carefully look in the event of last 5 to 6 years, there has been a surreal yet surprising silence on part of our strategic circle, political parties, press, academia, intelligentsia, and academia in order about the working and motives and the capacity and efficacy of ISPR, the propaganda wing of Pakistan Army. We do not even realize the harm they are doing to the capacities. There are some, op-ed articles written and here there, but I think General Hassan is one of the rare few in our circle today who have in-depth understanding and spoken about what ISPR is up to. They are more dangerous than ISI today. They are radicalizing more people than ISI. They are turning strategic defeats into, great victories for Pakistan. I think narrative ka soche, we are thinking that we have given them some good hunts and they are now scared and Pakistan Fauj is recalibrating and they'll not do anything for 10 years. They have already declared victory. You declared a ceasefire on a press conference. They declared ceasefire in stadiums on a big, large screens with fireworks. That look, these people have come and asked for ceasefire. We have already won. So, and it's not that they are faking it. They are actually believing it. Then there is this whole business of claims that we have shot down 5 Indian aircrafts. We technically have absolutely no denial on that fact from our side. Even if they shot out, we should have denied. Even if they shot down, we should have not have given them that advantage that something went down because of your thing. And worse, we have not even claimed what we have shot down. Because, I have spoken to some people who are directly in charge of this entire operation, and I know the electronic signatures they have, the radar signatures we have. Almost 7 aircrafts have been shot down, 4 in air, 2 in the bunkers, including 4 F-16. 2 AWACS, we are not even, forget, why do we need to analyze the data and then slowly see whether it was 10 or 8, and then wait for 8-9 years? I think today someone has put out that exact number. It is too late. We should have very day one, we should have told that we have shot down 10, 12 of them. We have lost a couple of them. It doesn't matter in the times of war. We lose assets. But all our pilots are safe. So if you had said that, his whole gambit of claiming victory on the fact that he has taken down 6 aircrafts would have been thrown to dust. Right now, if you look at all Pakistani media on the streets of Pakistan, the roads of Pakistan, there are big banners with a photo of DG ISPR and this air chief and others, and they are claiming हम 5 मिनट में दुश्मन के जहाज और गुरूर दोनों गिराते हैं. 90 only 5% of people in Pakistan actually feel that you have done more harm to them, you have given them good, you have targeted their air bases, you have done huge destruction, and those 5% people are Pakistan Army, which are claiming victory and faking it. 95% Pakistanis believe they've actually won. So only 5% know the real story, you have got the good banging. So now, and you would also realize that it is not some real-time thing they are doing. They are preparing it for years and years. This time, they very well knew that India is going to strike. And they will very well say that this is a counter-strike because the original escalation is the Pulwama attack. And you are calling it Pakistan-sponsored terrorism across the world. What Pakistan did, they did 3 press conferences before Pulwama. One was an emergency press conference on 29th of April, done by DG ISPR. That 1 hour press conference, where he called the global media, for 1 hour he presented proofs of evidence, call recordings, photos, screenshots, money trail of India-sponsored terrorism in Balochistan and other places in Karachi where there were IED blasts, and he gave the visual evidence. He also invited people across the world, independent media, independent institutions, to look at that forensic evidence. He was trying to create a parity. Next day, he called his deputy prime minister. They do a joint press conference. Again, they perpetuate the same lies that, look, India is doing all this. We have found the irrefutable evidence. This is the mobile phone. We have arrested a guy. We did the forensic evidence. Entire global, and he is inviting again global experts across the world. Thankfully, we took the invitation. We destroyed that entire forensic investigation, proof by proof, and we showed to the world that the entire evidence, what they were producing at forensics, were fakery. It was digital forgery. And when we started investigating, we realized that if you one had to carefully see, the entire narrative was nothing but digital forgery, fake screenshots, propaganda. There was no money trail, only tails, fake ID blast, and it was all done to create a global parallel of India-sponsored terrorism versus Pakistan-sponsored terrorism, and they succeeded well. Once we threw that story off in the market, they were made to eat crow. In their next press conferences, they removed all the screenshots because they realized that, and they had sent that entire report to International Court of Justice. Now, one may laugh that you can send anything to ICJ, what jurisdiction they have. No, they are not looking for any ICJ thing. See, once you start tweeting out articles, putting out articles, India-sponsored terrorism, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. This is the information age. You look at ChatGPT, you look at Grok, you look at Microsoft's Copilot. All of them, these AIs are ingesting data from the credified sources, and AI doesn't differentiate between Indian media and Pakistani media. If there is a verified news site like GeoTV or Dawn, whatever they are publishing, these AI systems are ingesting it. Now, if you were to search India-sponsored terrorism, you will find at least 1,000 articles in the last 1 month. They are playing it. If you send this whole dossier to ICJ, ICJ will upload on their website. Now AI thinks ICJ means more credible body, more value. So you ingest more. So this is a narrative we have to fight. And once we put out that report, they removed all those screenshots. See, ISPR has a habit of taking a 2-step back if you expose them. These phantoms, they do all sort of forgery. Now what they have done, I think where we have completely lost. See, we have right now, no matter what celebrations we can claim in India, next day of ceasefire, he did again a 2-hour press conference where he called the global media, and he had literally destroyed every credibility our media had. He said there are 5 people in India who deserves some Padma Awards and Bharat Ratna. Lieutenant General Navika Kumar for capturing Karachi Harbour and Lahore Port. Now Bharat Times for capturing 2 pilots. Times Now for taking out 2 F-16s. Republic TV said that Shehbaz Sharif is in bunker. Somebody said there is a coup. Worse, you ran every big channel, including our most credible journalists with great history, Razif Sadesai, Ishe Barur, Gaurav Samant, and every journalist you can name. Every channel ran a fake video, a deep fake video of DG ISPR saying that we were sorry to admit that we have lost 2 aircrafts in the battle, and it is not a number. And they ran a 1.5 minute video. It was a deep fake. I mean, how could you even do it? And I personally called up 5 saying that's a deep fake. What are you doing? 5 removed, 10 ran. कि नहीं अच्छा चल रहा है जिसमें eyeballs आ रहे हैं. And next day, now you can throw a small apology, but what happens when you put out those videos on Twitter and everything? Now you have this information strikes that this is a manipulated media, misinformation, fakery. Imagine your most reputed journalists now have a tag of fakery and misinformation. It all goes down. And you know who created that fake video? Someone in our system. I know where it came from. I mean, if you do all this, and whom are you trying to counter? See, all these narratives of we have hit these many things in Pakistan and Pakistan is lying. Whom are we trying to counter? The misinformation, right? It is also not happening because we have cut our own legs. This time, what we did, in the garb of fighting misinformation, we have banned 17,000 Pakistani handles. Now, forget about this usual DG ISPR and Shehbaz Sharif and great influencers. Anybody who spoke of any fact from Pakistan was banned, 17,000. Now, our people think, so I'll tell you another story. So suppose if there is someone standing on a podium with a big mic and he's abusing you, speaking 100 lies, and there are 1,000 people listening from your own constituency, and you don't want these 1,000 people in your constituencies to get carried away from the lies this guy is speaking on the stage. There are 2 things you can do it. A, you can shut that guy off, close the mic, or you can ensure that somehow you remove these people or put some earbuds so that they don't listen to this guy. What have we done? We have put some earbuds in our own ears and thinking that now since we can't listen anything, neither they are listening and now neither he is speaking. And I'll tell you how. These 17,000 handles we banned on Twitter, Facebook, here and there, they are not blocked. Our bureaucrats could not understand that the blocking request they were sending, what Twitter has done, they have withheld those handles, withheld that information in Indian territory to the entire globe, everyone in the other country, it is completely visible. Now, what has it resulted into? We are not able to see what they are putting. Whatever falsehood and lies they are putting, it is going uncontested across the world because there is no counter. See, earlier what was happening, they will post something, 100 people from this side will counter and call it a fake. Now you can't see that what fake he has put out, and he has a free run in the entire globe. So entire global media, you read now, they are claiming Pakistan and India had a skirmish. There is a parity Pakistan has achieved. You look at anybody's statement. Donald Trump, anyone, oh, India and Pakistan, you are putting a victim and a terror perpetrator in the same tap. The same propaganda. Every global media is saying, oh yeah, India did lose tons of aircraft. Fine. We may have lost 1, 2 or 6, doesn't matter. Nobody is asking how many they lost. We didn't even ask. We didn't even claim. And I know some people who are saying, अभी 10-15 दिन में हम पूरा evidence इकट्ठा कर ले, फिर हम भी निकालेंगे. Sir, 1 महीने बाद कोई नहीं पूछ रहा. In this age, truth has an expiry date of 24 hours. Lies have an expiry date of life. Whoever speaks first, whoever speaks louder is, considered to speak the truth. Whoever speaks
Mr.
last,
Jain,
Yeah, I
Mr.
think
Jain, sorry to interrupt, but General Hasnain has to leave, so he's got to
Yeah,
make some comments, please.
I just came for some
Understood
other-
clearly.
So my point is, instead of
Yeah.
glorifying our own things, what we have done better from the last time. We have upgraded from cycle to a scooter, but our adversary is running in a car, and we have to compete with him. So it's doesn't matter how better we are from yesterday. How ahead we are from our competitors tomorrow will be the question.
Thank
yeah,
you.
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Lot of practical ideas which you gave. Ata Hasnain sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I am not a full-time participant, as I mentioned at the beginning, but I'm tempted now to step in and spend a little more time, perhaps, because it's been such a fascinating discussion. On one side, we've seen the two extremes. Chaitanya Sahib has given us the positives, how well it has been conducted, quite a departure from the past, achieved much. While Jitan has given you a reality check to say that at the lower levels, it hasn't gone as well as we may think it has gone. So I will not try and give an opinion on who is right, who's wrong, whether we did well or whether we did badly. It's important to take home lessons more than anything else. So I would start by the typical staff college intervention to bring out what the principles of good what strategic communication are. And this is a pickup from the discussion which is going on at the moment, from what Jitan has said, what Chaitanya Sahab has said, what Jan Gautam has said. I would start with the first word, credibility. Unless your campaign is credible, you go nowhere. Second is consistency. You have to be consistent with your effort which goes on. And there's a lot of difference between consistency and continuity. There has to be continuity, but there has to be consistent continuity. That's an important aspect. The fourth one, which is a more important thing than any, is the organizational backup. If you think you can just pick up, I can give you from my own example. I was very fascinated by the subject of strategic communication as the Corps Commander when I realized that we now had handles to communicate with. In the sense, we had social media empowerment in the valley all of a sudden in the year 2010. And I still remember we said, let's form a cell and let's start doing this immediately. And we did this in the next 3 or 4 days. In 3 days' time, my little organization ran out of ideas, ran out of material. They had nothing else. They didn't know what to do. Because this is a field in which, as I said, consistency is very important. You can't wake up one fine day and say, I will start a social media campaign now. That is the worst thing to possibly do. Because you'll get isolated in that. You have to have a consistent narrative build-up. And one thing which I realized then, which I continue to believe today, 15 years later, is without academic backup, without a professional academic backup, no campaign on social media, or no campaign of communication strategy can ever succeed. You have to have clear objectives and you have to identify your targets. Just to think a general message will go out, a general communication will go out, it will affect some people somewhere, that doesn't give you any credibility at all. Your selection of themes and narratives, you keep using the word narrative here, but narrative has to be a selected narrative. It's not just something random which you have picked up and that is going to go. The narrative has to be correctly drafted. You have to understand it yourself, be convinced yourself to add credibility to it. The means of communication. For example, I noticed one of the things which was coming around in social media in the last few days. Many 3-star generals of the Pakistan veterans suddenly wrote in the international media all over. And it seemed to have made some kind of an impact there. Now, what I can say is that I was very choosy myself. All of us were involved with channels or the other. I was very choosy about the channels I was going to. I refused most of them. I wrote in English, mainstream media, but I found very, very shortly, I found that I was making a mistake because the main thing was in the Hindi media. It needed to be told in the vernacular to people. And that is how you suddenly found me appearing in Dainik Bhaskar. All of a sudden, going back to Dainik Jagran, Dainik Bhaskar, the links I had with them, and they started running my stories all of a sudden. I would have loved it if officialdom had recognized some of us who were writing and had tasked us specifically with what they have in mind. You see, here I was doing everything randomly, and so was Chaitanya. And many of us who were doing things randomly formed as per perception that was formed in our minds, which comes back to the whole system of organization. That unless you have an organizational backup for this, the credibility of the whole campaign itself becomes very suspect. Then, of course, the aspect of misinformation. Misinformation is a part of this whole game. Your misinformation has to be also credible misinformation. It can't be out of the world misinformation completely. I mean, if you want to allow your misinformation to run its course, which means you may have 3 or 4 days of it remaining alive before it is discovered and before it is countered. Those 4 or 5 days, it will affect a certain segment of a population whom themselves later on will not, the counters may not be able to change their minds. The whole idea of misinformation is that it manages to grab certain eyeballs, manages to grab ears and take them to your narrative. They get embedded there, and subsequently when the counter comes, some of it leave it, but many of them remain behind. That's the whole idea behind. So these are some of the principles I thought which are very important, and I do think that without strategic communication, a battle is incomplete today. You may win battles, but if you lose the narratives, you really lose your wars as such. So what are the reasons? I'm not looking at our model, I'm looking at internationally. What are the reasons for lack of effective strategic communication? One is, as I pointed out, the absence of institutional framework. And this is somewhere where Pakistan has got a major advantage. The ISPR has been there better part of since 1949, and obviously is an experienced body which has been, parroting the official version all through. We don't necessarily need to ape that model. We have a very, very good information and broadcasting ministry, and I always quote this example. Why should we talk only of war or conflicts when it comes to strategic communication? I was a part of the strategic communication group for fighting COVID. And we fought COVID so effectively. The Ministry of Information and Broadcasting was so powerful in this message at that time. I still remember we used to have our evening meetings in 2020. Ideas were generated, ideas were discussed. At 6 o'clock in the evening, an idea was given out to the ministry, and the ministry was able to produce a creative by 8 o'clock next morning. It is that fast. Now, can we replicate that in our model? That is the important thing. And for me, a dream would be to see the Information and Broadcasting Ministry and the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of External Affairs and the Ministry of Home Affairs coming together on a platform. That would be the ultimate. That is where the organizational aspect will really come in. Complete synergy. And needed in this kind of a thing is a body. And I always have been talking about advocating this. I come from an organization called the National Disaster Management Authority. It's an authority. It's like the UPSC, or it is like the University Grants Commission, or something like that. It's just an authority. But this authority is virtually independent. It can do a tremendous amount of policy work. It can put out public policy. It can put out a lot of narratives on what's happening in the world of disaster management, etc., etc. We need some statutory body. It has to be a statutory body. We need a statutory body backed by the power of all the different stakeholders in terms of the ministries, right? And we need a blend of the military, of the diplomatic, academics. We need journalists, that's media persons, analysts, digital content creators, psychological experts, and visual media experts. What a lethal combination this will be. Can you imagine? If you can, I just quoted you the example of just the combination of digital creativity in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. An idea generated in the evening is put in the next morning and played out. Right? So this is something which I think will fetch us tremendous dividends. Uncontrolled competition for eyeballs. This is something, you see, at the end of the day, we are a democracy. There's no doubt about it. And we are a very effective democracy. We are a model democracy for much of the world. But at the end of the day, you cannot allow over-democratization to run against your basic security principles. That cannot be allowed to run against it. So, official information is always good, but should be more frequent, for number one. And all kinds of embedding. We should look at the whole concept of embedding so that genuine information can be coming out from different sources. We are doing a very good job at the moment. I've seen in the last 3 days, all this we are seeing from Amritsar, Pathankot, and places like that. Excellent, very good journalism going on, bringing out genuine stories. I wish this had been done a little earlier, slightly late in it. So, in one of the principles is timeliness. In this whole game of communication strategy, timeliness is a very, very important principle. Well, I suppose one can go on and on this, anticipating narratives. One of the jobs of an organization which is tasked to look at communication strategy is to keep assessing. It's not the job of the IB or the job of the intelligence agencies. If you are a media specialist, you better start looking at the mind, the psyche of your adversary, and understanding what is the kind of narrative he's likely to spin. I think Jitan just spoke about it also. So if you are anticipating that, make sure that you have overcome it before itself. You have countered it before itself. The use of, you see, this business of the veterans, I personally feel the veterans did not perform well at all during this entire episode. I wish people had held themselves back a little. I deliberately made sure that as we enjoined battle, I remained with one or maybe or two channels once in an evening, no more. But this overdrive of getting people back in and out and spewing out, knowledge and information is something which is counterproductive completely. Last of it, just a little bit of thing before we call it a day. A very simple narrative, like the Indian no first use, the doctrine of no first use. The international community is getting concerned about a potential nuclear exchange. That's the time when the world must know, see our sense of responsibility. As a nation, our leadership, our government has ensured that we have never abrogated this particular doctrine. Although there have been a world of pressure on us to do it. No first use, despite the fact that we face two adversaries who are both nuclear armed. Now, that's the kind of theme which can actually play out tremendously with the international community. I'm not summing up what has been spoken. It's been spoken outstandingly by everyone. But one of the biggest dilemmas that we face always as a nation is in a policy, from a policy angle, is this fact about bilateralism and internationalization. The Shimla Accord very clearly says bilateralism, right? And we have been promoting our approach has been always bilateral. Now, this issue of going and explaining your narrative internationally to all the major capitals of the world, is it an internationalization? So this is a dilemma that we are always stuck with. I think we should not allow the Shimla Accord to sort of stymie our approach to the international community. This is not internationalization. It is explaining your point of view. And I think the decision to send out our parliamentary teams has been an outstanding decision. And I'm sure that they will achieve whatever they have been designed to achieve. This issue, which was mentioned by Mr. Rubin, is an important issue about Muslims of India. And there's no doubt about it that Pakistan will use every and any means to try and create an outreach, to create a wedge. And this is something that we have to guard against. How do we build up this? How do we build up counter narratives to it? I haven't seen so far a single member of the Indian Muslim clergy coming up to speak. And there are n number of them who will be willing to do it. But we have not chosen to do it so far. It will be a huge counter. Let a bearded man come on the Indian television to say, we Indian Muslims are all for our nation. Let this voice travel across the line of control and the international border. Let's say what does the Pakistanis have to say to that. I'll stop there because otherwise there are too many things I have to say. But I'll stop here. But I think this has been an outstanding discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir. I thought you brought out terrific points. I'll sum up what you have summed up and cherry pick what you have said, because at the core of it, we have been discussing about this for a long time now. Right, to all audience who have become YouTube members and who have contributed to this evening, thanks a lot. I'm not going to put up your names. I'll put it up tomorrow when you get back on the morning show. Right. Let me put it this way. I think what India lacks is a policy on strategic national communication. This is something which we have lacked. I mean, we need to put it. Strategic communication has to be a national plan, and it has to be a national policy, and that policy has to be brought into place at every time it is required. It's not only for war; it could be a disaster, it could be for elections, it could be for anything. That's the first thing. For that, you need an organization to back this plan. Do we have this organization? We have the best in Bollywood who can spin stories by the hour, if not by the minutes, right? We have the best actors who can help us out, right? We have the best politicians. You see our elections. Elections is full of information and misinformation and media. And yet these very politicians, when they come and occupy positions of authority in the government, fail. They fail. After all, they failed at national level and this thing. Let's be very clear about it. And this is not something new. This is our age-old deficiency. Every government, every major nation has a state media. We have a state media which we don't use. It is something I have never been able to understand. Just think, every Republic Day, every Independence Day, the only news you get is through DD, and that is fed to everyone, and everyone is then free to discuss on that. There's no lien on the fundamental thing. Why don't we put that into operation during wars? Why is it that every Tom, Dick, and Harry has to get every Tom, Dick, and Harry to talk about it? Get a good lot of people who can talk about it on your state media, and that is relayed through all these people, so that all these generals and lieutenant generals and field marshals or the media are they can just comment on what is said plus minus, and that's it. Not manufacture news. And then whatever news has to be manufactured can be manufactured elsewhere. At the what Mr. Chaitanya Prasad was saying, lot has been done this time. Let me be very clear. A lot of people don't believe what has come out. And also, let me put it this way: truth has its own power. I don't agree with what Jiten Jain says. Right? Truth has its own power. In due course of time, truth will come out, and it has already started coming out. You might have lost the media war for 5 days, 10 days, but you'll win the longer media war. I have no doubt about that. Okay. And more importantly, we're not bothered about the nation of Pakistan. We are more interested in, paralyzing the minds of these military jokers and those elite politicians. That is where we have won the day, and there's no doubt about it. So it's a thing. Why don't we have structured briefings for all these things? As a process, not as a reactive kind of a thing. Okay. And then, we have, like I said, we have valued our own DD. And then, similarly, we need to have a channel on the social media also. We need to have accredited channels who can talk all this. It's a matter of putting an organization in place. You need to have a structured international outreach. You need to have a panel of people who can talk. It's not that every Tom, Dick, and Harry can talk about all these. And that same thing has to be virtually in national media and a whole lot of vernacular media. I mean, my own experience. In those 4 days, I think I was approached by almost every news channel to talk to them every time. It's impossible. If every news channel gets, a guy every half an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, he's got different ideas. He's not wired onto it. Then you're lost the track, and we've lost it that way. Right? So I think these are all interesting things which have come out of what we have spoken today. I've just summed up and streamlined what all of you have put together. I'd like to thank everyone for giving their views. I'm not going to take questions. I think this is more of exchange of ideas. I do hope, Mr. Chaitanya Prasad, you take back all these issues, and I'm prepared to come and sit with you and discuss these in a different manner. All right. With this, I'd like to hand over to General Gautam Murthy, sir. Your vote of thanks, and we'll close it.
So, thank you very much, General Shankar. Thank you, General Atas Sir. Thank you, Mr. Chaitanya Prasad, Mr. Jiten Jain, and Professor Ruben in absentia. I think we have had a very enriching discussion. We have seen the uh, how Pakistan is trying to put across a narrative, which I think at the end of our discussion, we've been able to nail quite a bit. To that extent, I believe that our webinar has achieved its aim of nailing Pakistan's lies. Thank you all very much for your time, and thank you, dear audience, for taking out time to view this webinar. Thank you all very much. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, sir, and thanks a lot to everyone who's joined, and thanks a lot to everyone on Gunner Shot also. Good evening and Jai Hind to all of you.
Thank you, sir.